Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
What do you do when you wake up and your partner is being levitated? Where do you turn if you have an alien abduction experience? Exactly what is it that's doing the abducting?
Hello and welcome to the 956th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, coming to you from WOON AM and FM radio here in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, on the Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live, on YouTube and via TuneIn.com. I'm Ben, and those uplifting questions came from my co-host, partner in Paranormal Adventures, and dad, Paul.
Matthew Moniz has been a scientist for the last 30 years in the field of analytical chemistry, working in the past for environmental, commercial, contract product testing, and the pharmaceutical laboratories. He is currently heading up an analytical department, what's the matter with me today, department in a cutting-edge biotech in the greater Boston area. He is also the science advisor for a weekly radio show, Spooky South Coast. I think it's probably the only show in New England that's older than us. For the last 17 years. And the audio-video manager for the UFO Monument Park and Paraween and Inner Space TV. Matt is also one of the producers of 30-odd Minutes and researcher and cameraman for the show. He's worked firsthand with the world's best in paranormal research, conducting scientific tests on materials connected to things like UFOs, alien abductions, crop circles, witchcraft, psychic phenomena, ghosts, cryptozoology, and a multitude of other related topics. His scientific work is featured in dozens of books pertaining to these fields, and he has appeared on a number of TV shows and documentaries about the paranormal over the years, like Monster Quest, Conversations with a Serial Killer, and more. Favorite beer, Bass. There you go.
Yeah,
that's the most unusual bio.
Well, I think it fits. I think it fits his character. So, Matt Moniz, welcome back to Behind the Paranormal.
Thank you. I am very happy to return here.
Well, it's convenient that you live nearby as well. It's always fun to have someone in studio. It adds a different energy to everything. So I guess let's just hop right into it. I guess so. Sure. Let's start talking about your own experience.
Okay.
What happened to you, and tell us about your witness to it.
Okay. If you want to go to that particular case, I've been actually an abductee since I was a young child, but as you get older, you get into relationships, and you wind up, living together with various partners. And on one particular, I'll call it abduction, I was being actually returned, and I was being floated, levitated above the bed, as they brought me through, and for some reason or somehow, the girl I was living with at the time wound up getting startled and woke up and saw me about 1.5 feet above the bed. And then she looked beyond me and saw these two little figures standing on the other side of the bed, moving me into position, at which point she freaked out, immediately went from horizontal to standing on the bed, running in place, screaming. And I am, levitated above the bed, and I'm immobile, but that jarred me out of the catatonic state I was in. I saw her, and I saw them on the other side of the bed, and the little things freaked out. They bumped into each other, not knowing what to do, because this apparently doesn't happen to them that often. And next thing I know, the suspension field or whatever was used to keep me aloft stopped, but I was still immobile. So I fall about 1.5 feet onto the bed, and, nature of a bed, if you come from a height and you bounce.
Right, yeah.
Well, I bounced up and rotated 180 degrees, headed face first to the floor. And I'm like, oh my God, this is going to hurt, because I couldn't move and put my arms out to stop. So, nose first right into the carpet. Bang! That brought me out of the immobility that I was in. She is still standing on the bed screaming. They're at the wall getting ready, and they went right through the wall. And I'm climbing up onto the bed, and she looks down at me. What was that? And I'm like, I forgot to tell you, I'm an abductee. And she looked down at me and said, "You're a what?" Yeah, I get taken by, these little creatures, And at that point, one of them stuck their head back in the window. And this window is about 12 feet off the ground, and there was all running and screaming in place again. It took me about an hour to peel her off the ceiling. That's a metaphor.
Right, yeah. Hey, you never know.
True. And I sat her down, and I tried to explain to her, and then about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, I called Bud Hopkins, who I've been working with for years, and I gave the phone to her and let her speak to Bud for about half an hour, and he tried to explain what happened. And a week and a half later, she packed up and left.
I was going to say, it must have done wonders for your relationship.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know who Bud Hopkins was, he was probably the leading abduction expert of the mid to late 20th century. And he was, matter of fact, we met him in 2003. You were just a wee lad.
I was like 9 or 10 years old,
Yeah.
so I didn't understand the gravity, pardon the pun.
Well, we were speaking.
Well,
we were speaking at this. I see what you did there. We were speaking at the same conference in West Virginia, and we had a chance to sit down. And he had a photo album of stuff that marks you find on bodies of people who've been abducted. And I said, Bud, this is half the stuff I see on the bodies of people who've been attacked by poltergeists. So whoa, so we were going to work it, but then he came down with cancer, and unfortunately we weren't able to do anything else. But that's who Bud Hopkins was. Amazing guy. Very tall too.
Most people don't realize he was a victim of polio as a child.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that.
No, I knew that. Peter told me.
Oh.
Yeah, and he would walk with a limp and slightly bent over and stuff like that.
I do vaguely remember that, yeah.
Yeah. Very nice guy. Extremely talented artist. He was actually an artist. People don't realize that, his field wasn't psychology, although we did study it and, did go learn it after the fact, but he was mainly an artist. I think it was his passion for, the arts and things that gave him the compassion to look into people and what was going on. General curiosity about life, and, because most artists like to understand what's going on in the world because they're trying to make representations of it.
Right, yeah. So. Yeah, it's how we order our reality. Well,
Yes.
one of the 4 ways, at least.
So, why you? I mean, I'm sure every abductee asks that question. Maybe
Right.
Yeah. Even ourselves, that's the first thing that we do is, why me? What is so special about me?
Because you knew Bud Hopkins.
Well,
No, I'm kidding.
I met him afterwards, but a lot of the people that I've worked with in this subject, both people looking into it and people who have experienced it, I think the biggest thing is our own curiosity. A lot of abductees are curious by nature. Okay, so they're looking into things. They always want to know, how does this work? Why does that work? Who is that? What do they do? The general curiosity.
Right, yeah.
And just like anything that is curious, you're going to eventually find something else curious looking back.
Right. Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting question I kind of came up with while you were describing your experience, which thank you for sharing with us, by the way.
No problem.
Before you qualified, before you started speaking, we'll call it an abduction, quote unquote. Would you call it something different?
I'm using the modern terms only because it's a descriptor for an event. I mean, it's become what people ascribe to it. Yeah, I mean, I have no other words that I could really put to it. It's an experience. Everything we do in life is an experience. It's abduction in the sense that I didn't ask to go do this.
Right, yeah, it's against your will.
Yeah, that kind of thing. A lot of people don't understand that there are different forms of this. You have abduction, where it is a person that is forcibly taken against their will. You have experiencers. Those are people that have no feeling either way. I'm just going to go with the flow. This is happening. And then there are what are known as contactees, people that are willfully looking and doing these interactions.
It's weird. I've never had anybody break those down before. I've always heard the words used interchangeably.
Well, most people use experiencer because you start off as an abductee and you're there involved. You're just going with the flow, trying to figure out what's going on. And usually the contactees are the people that have. Unfortunately, there are people that claim to be contactees that are actually suffering from certain medical conditions, that we'll say.
Right.
But there are other true contactees that are, have learned to transcend the fear and whatever and somehow make a positive interaction.
So would you say that your interactions were overall negative, neutral, positive?
Oh, I can't. The negative part of it is only mainly due to my own not understanding what's going on. As I got older and got more involved, okay, I understand. I'm the lab rat. Okay, I understand my position in this now. Okay, before when you're a child and this is occurring, it's unknown. So anything unknown is generally frightening to people. So it's a negative experience because you don't understand.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. So as a scientist, you work in the field of science.
Yep.
How have these experiences affected, your overall, maybe more than just your work? How has this affected your worldview?
Interesting question. As a scientist, science is a methodology. And I've seen a lot of it being changed today that people don't understand. They're making it a belief system. It has become the new church in a certain sense. And that's a bad thing. Okay? Because, I know you guys have had a religious beginning. And religion is great on a whole, but unfortunately it can also be usurped in terms of power and control.
Yep.
And, because you can't question the church about this. And what did they do? And then you wind up...
I questioned everything in the seminary.
But the point...
I'm not a priest.
You understand what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely.
Okay, so, when you do that in science is all about questioning. When you can't question science anymore, then it's no longer science.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that.
So would you say that these experiences have sort of aided in sort of questioning the narrative, right?
Yeah.
And being able to, I guess I would guess, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it would sort of help you think outside the box a bit.
Yes.
Yeah, because it is. You could step outside and say, well, I've experienced X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Because this can't be possible because of this. The hell it can't. I've personally witnessed, these kind of things, so I know that there is a thing beyond that we're not understanding yet. There are no absolutes. There is only one absolute that I know of. And that absolute is called change.
Interesting.
Okay? Everything changes. There are no absolutes. The speed of light. Well, the speed of light that we've found does vary. You put heavy gravitational things and, like a black hole will bend the speed of light and even prevent light from moving and things like that. So it's not always constant.
Right.
So what you think of as constant isn't really. So it's perspective. And that's what I'm looking at from here. I'm always looking at things that can be. There's no such thing as impossible. It's just time that it's going to take to make it possible.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess kind of stepping back into your experience with all this being said, one of the things that really stuck out to me was besides the Keystone Cops sort of like nature of the event, the interesting thing that I kind of took away from it was when you flipped and fell onto the floor, it kind of broke whatever was happening.
Right.
And a part of me wonders if it was this is just me spitballing here, so
Go ahead.
Feel free to stop me. It sounds almost like an induced sleep paralysis, sort of, maybe, because it's like you were kind of aware of what was going on,
right,
but you weren't able to move, and it wasn't coming from you. But as soon as you hit the floor, something knocked you out of it. Would you say that was something cognitive, or was there something mechanical involved? Maybe both.
I'm thinking. Good question. Maybe a mixture of both. Okay, we know that we can induce what are called paralytics into people that prevent. That can be done either electrochemically, chemically, or neurologically. Okay. Now the brain controls the rest of your body. If you can somehow control the nervous system, you can paralyze a person. And sleep paralysis, because that was one of the things that's used to explain away abductions. And here, let me correct this for people now. Sleep paralysis has nothing to do with abductions, because sleep paralysis is a vestigial remnant of when we used to live in trees, and it prevented sleeping animals from moving and falling out of the tree, and prevented you. So when you sleep paralysis only happens from a sleep to waking state, and only lasts a matter of seconds. Whereas in a lot of abduction stories you hear, the people understand that there's something in their room. They're focusing around. They're moving, trying to track what's moving. Then they get paralyzed. Okay? The paralysis happens afterwards, not the other way around. Sleep paralysis only happens from a sleeping state to a waking state. So you wake up paralyzed. With abductions, your good friend of mine, Linda Napolitano, who's featured in the book Witness, one of the things she did, she saw the thing moving at the end of the bed. She grabbed one of the pillows and whipped it at him. And then at that point, she got zapped and frozen and laid out in a paralytic state. So that rules out by definition the way sleep paralysis works. And like I said, I went to a lot of professionals that deal with sleep paralysis and other people that suffer from it, just to compare notes. As a scientist, I'm going to look. You're going to give me something? Okay, let me look into that. And a lot of the cards fit, but not the right order.
Right. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Interesting.
Yeah. We have a couple of questions from our good friend Peter Shelley in Bogota, Colombia, also a guest co-host. I should mention, too, that Matt is the newest member of the stable of guest co-hosts for this show.
Woo-hoo!
And
welcome.
We'll hope to have him on many times. So, Ben, if you would do the honors from
Sure.
Peter in Bogota.
Okie dokie. Peter writes to us, has anyone tried simply setting up video cameras outside of the house of alleged abductees to try and catch a UFO in the act of taking someone? This would be like a police stakeout in cooperation with the abductee. Who would suggest the best times?
We've done this dozens and dozens and dozens of times. And what happens is the same thing that happens when you set out trail cams for Bigfoot and things like that. Something happens to the cameras. And I remember one case in particular that I helped, even loaned them some equipment. They set it up. When it came time for things to happen, all the cameras
gone,
switched off. Now, it's all right for one camera, a battery going dead. And when you have four of them all going off at the same time, and then all coming back on a couple hours later, and this isn't just happening once. This is happening on several attempts at investigation, not at just one location, but other locations. There have been a handful of cases where one camera stayed on a little bit longer than the other, and there are a few, we'll call it grainy images of things. But the other thing that's interesting is they've had actual people stakeouts, not cameras, people sitting outside the house watching for things to happen. And the people in the vehicle that was parked outside the house saw the lights happening and this and that, go to use their electronics, wouldn't work. Thing blinks out and whatever, they try the camera again, and all of a sudden it's working.
See, this is one thing that's always perplexed me. Excuse me. The UFOs, as a rule, as far as I know anyway, are bright, shiny, like they want everybody to see them. The Phoenix lights, which I saw from an airplane, actually, one time, Phoenix, Arizona. Things of that kind. And yet, everything goes black. And we've had similar things happen to us in other situations, electronics go down, batteries drain, this kind of thing. I mean, what the hey is, as much as you can judge an alien agenda or apply our narrow paradigm to it, what's going on here? I mean, why they want to? I still think it's like they want people to see the craft, if that's what they are, or the objects. But the whole, I don't know. Is it unintentional because of the electromagnetic fields that are draining the equipment, or what?
Well, they are using some sort of electromagnetic energy in order for their propulsion, whether it's using it to cut the magnetic lines of force and gravity, which is the leading theory, and that will affect other electronics, as we know. High amounts of electromagnetism is going to affect your phone. It's going to affect anything else electronic.
Right.
And another thing that people don't hear about is, they're not always lighted. On a number of occasions, UFOs were seen above a person's house that was an abductee in complete darkness. The only way the person knew something was there because it was blocking out the stars or the moon behind it, and they got a silhouette of it. And you get a brief flash of light, in a form of stealth mode type of thing. Usually most abduction cases, that's what you have, is the thing comes in blacked out, and and you'll get a flash of light when something is happening, either leaving or coming or something activating. But 99% of the time they're blacked out. Only on occasion when there's a reason for them to light up, and I can't say why because I'm not the one driving, they light up for whatever they need to do and then take off.
Now, unless Ben has a question here, I've got two for you, Matt. One is, can you take us through, this has been going on your whole life, the first time you remember this happening, was it similar to what you just described, or was it different?
No, very first encounter I had was as a child, about 3 years old, 3.5, going on 4, 1970. Out in a town called Sagamore, Massachusetts, which is right on the Cape Cod Canal. Adams Street, to be exact, if anybody really wants to go look that up.
Actually, I know where it is.
Okay. So, the top of the hill would be where the Christmas tree shop is.
Oh, okay.
My house was down below. It was long before the Christmas tree shop is. So it's basically right outside the gates of Otis Air Force Base.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So, as a little kid, I was in my bedroom. I had my little Matchbox cars, or, whatever, little die-cast metal cars, and I was playing with them on my bed. So I have my knees up with the sheet over me like this, creating a little ramp with my knees and my feet. You put the car on top of the knees, let it roll down to your feet, as a 3-year-old would do. playing around. My parents were in their bedroom with my newborn sister, which was still sleeping in a bassinet, so I had the room to myself. And I'm just playing with the cars. It was a kind of a street light that was in the back of the house that lit the parking lot where the cars were. So I had enough light to play, and I didn't feel sleepy, so I'm just playing with the cars. All of a sudden, the light turned from a regular white light to this blue turquoise type of light coming in through the window, really bright. And I'm like, what's that? And the room filled with like this negative air pressure. It felt like the room atmospheric changed, so much so that my closet door at the end of the bed popped and creaked open. It definitely was a change in ambient pressure in the room. And that scared the hell out of me, because I also felt a presence. And I'm like, what do you think any 3-year-old kid is going to do?
Probably, yeah, right?
Yeah, get under the covers. I pulled the covers over my head, and it was just a sheet. And I'm like, holding it tight, and I remember seeing a shadow through this sheet at the end of the bed. And then all of a sudden, I felt this thing start to crawl up onto the bed. 1 foot on one side of me, 1 foot on the other, as it's slowly walking up the length of my body. And I'm getting ready to scream, and at that point, it put its hand on my face and started looking for the end of the sheet. My body just locked straight up, every toe, every finger locked straight up. And I went to scream for my parents, and the only thing I could get out was, I couldn't scream. It finally found the back of the sheet, and it pulled it out from behind my head, and I'm face to face with this thing that, the best way I can describe it is like your grave. But everybody, when they do these Hollywood images, and you know how they make them all smooth and silvery? No, they're not smooth. Their skin is more like that of an elephant, if you've ever seen an elephant up close. Very mottled and wrinkled. This thing looked old, really, really old. And the skin wasn't gray. It had dots and flecks of black and little bits of gray. But it also had shades of pink and things. If you've ever seen a rainbow trout, how they're kind of imagine a wrinkled skin with that type of iridescence underneath it. And big, the big black eyes and the nose. And I remember watching the nose, which, you know how a seal has a nose where it can open and close? It breathed like that, in a small, grimacing mouth that slowly articulated. And that was the last thing I remember. And that was conscious. That wasn't under hypnosis or anything. That was one of my oldest memories.
It's like a Chucky movie here. Well, on that note, let's take our mid-show break. Excuse me. You're listening to Behind the Paranormal. Then why don't you do this?
You got it, Dad. You're listening to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, with our fascinating guest, Matt Moniz. And right here in New England's beautiful but hot Blackstone Valley. We'll be right back.
It's coming, the 2022 edition of the Holy Trinity Carnival at the parish grounds at Park Square in Woonsocket. Relive memories, make new ones, games of luck and skill, classroom bingo, great carnival food at Cuisine Ronaldo, plus food trucks, nightly entertainment, Rockwell Amusements rides for the whole family with 2 one-price bracelet times on Wednesday night and Saturday afternoon. Take your chance of the huge parish Split the Pot. Tickets on sale now at the Rectory. Start 6 p.m. every night, plus a Saturday afternoon matinee. It's 4 nights and 1 great afternoon of summertime fun at the Holy Trinity Parish Carnival, Wednesday, July 27th through Saturday the 30th. Make your plans to be there.
And welcome back to Behind the Paranormal on WOON AM and FM radio out of Woonsocket, Rhode Island. We have our amazing guest, Matt Moniz, with us today. And we have another question here from Peter in Bogota, Colombia.
Yes. And our boy Peter writes to us
Getting back to the electronics issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
How did Bud Hopkins filter out? Actually, this is a different one. Paul, what about when film movie cameras were being used 8 and Super 8 somewhere? So where did they wind up?
Yeah, some of them were wound up. Well, I'm going to throw that over to Matt.
So they were wound up rather than with digital.
Yeah, sort of pre-digital.
Right. So I don't know. Yeah. I'm not really sure about analog film, but what say you?
Well, there have been several analog film things that have recorded UFOs, but all of the modern abduction cases, they were all using digital VHS, things that ran on batteries. Very few wound up film. The only film stuff that I know of that was used with stuff I was involved with was your typical 35 millimeter taking stills. Everything we tried to use was all VHS or digitally related.
Well, Peter also asked, how did Bud Hopkins filter out the mentally ill versus hoaxers?
Well, Bud took a bunch of classes and learned a bunch of mental health training from professionals. He would also have other mental health professionals with him in screening processes. If some cases of mental health issues are very self-evident. When you see the person and you start talking to them, you understand that you're dealing with somebody with an illness. Then when you get to other cases where it's a possibility this person is an actual abductee, he would bring us in with other board certified type of people that would ask us questions, or they would give Bud the questions to ask and then would monitor the responses. Mm-hmm. So we did use mental health professionals to help screen out, as well as various questionnaires.
Okay. Now, as far as getting back to your first experience with this very strange-looking creature, did you encounter that creature, again?
Yes.
Did it attempt to communicate at that point?
At that point, no, it did not attempt to communicate, but later on in preteen years and then in teen years, one's very much similar to it, and that particular one, that initial encounter, I ran into 3 other times from that time into when I got to be about a teenager. Then I started dealing with other similar types. I've seen like 3 different types. They were like the initial one, just a little bigger. I ran into, in a process of moving from one place to another and what they're doing, seeing a thing that would best be described as insectoid or mantis type. And then one of the last ones I ran into, sitting at a console as I was being walked by, would be something that could very easily pass for human in a crowd.
Does this still happen today?
Yeah, as a matter of 6 months ago. I have a roommate that, I've known ever since I was a kid, and he's former he's ex-Mel. He spent 20 years in the Army and things like that. Been in war and never had anything that really scared him other than the time he saw the light happening in my room and him knowing my my background. Is like, I wasn't about to go in.
Well,
he's the one who would survive in a horror movie.
Yeah.
Yes. One of the things that strikes me about these narratives is that the sincerity of the people who report them, and also the differences. It's like, at least the way I'm hearing them, they are just similar enough to one another to be credible, but there are differences that kind of bother me. Now I'm thinking, and I keep talking about this because this show was profoundly affected me, I think. It was from June 26th, show number 952, if you want to go behind the paranormal and the archives and listen to it, or iTunes or any other places where these are stored. That was a show with Preston Dennett.
Okay.
and his new book, Symmetry.
Mm-hmm.
And he was interviewing the subject of the book, or was on with us with the subject of the book, Dolly, Saffron, as she pronounces. And the book, I took 5 solid pages of notes as I read this book. And we didn't get to a lot of it in the interview. However, she tells the story much like one might have heard from George Adamski in the 50s and 60s, one of the first UFO experiencers. And, you know, he talks about being zipped away on a UFO to other planets and all this sort of thing. And she essentially tells the same story in great detail and started when she was 14 years old. Have you ever had anything like that happen? Now, I'm reserving judgment on, you know, what she says, but this is one narrative that I'd like to compare with yours.
Okay, I've been taken to other places. Nothing I would be able to say definitively was another planet or something. I know that I was taken in one type of vehicle, if you want to look at it that way, and brought to another location, which was obviously much bigger and larger in scope and scale of what came and got me, made to interact with people. And that's the other thing, especially with my particular case. Like I said, I had other people I've lived with that watch me get taken. I've met other people in the experiences wherever the hell we are. That's how I met the Starborn twins. That's actually how I met.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how you found.
That's also how I met my first wife. That's how Bud and I got introduced. Basically, I was a teenager at the time when this particular event happened. I was taken. I was brought into a room, and the room I remember as being basically a football shape, narrow at one end and narrow at the other end, wider in the middle. Okay, and there was a slight S type of pathway, and there were all of these boxes, gray boxes, starting small at the beginning of the pathway and building higher, and it gave me the illusion or the impression of an amphitheater or a theater type thing, because the boxes were small, irregular, but they were square in shape and a varying height, and they built higher as they went towards the edge of the ceiling, and the ceiling was domed. And on the other end of the pathway, I think this was probably maybe about 75 yards long, 3/4 of a football field in terms of size. I saw the doorway on the other side open up, and a young teenage girl walked through the door being escorted by 2 other of these little guys. And I was already sitting in the middle of the pathway looking at, basically I was looking for a way out, or something I can use as a weapon, or, whatever, because I wasn't a willing participant whenever these things would happen. And this girl comes walking in through the other doorway, and she comes walking over to me and sits down on a box next to me. And we started talking like typical middle teen kids would do about school, music, what I like about this, what the hell's going on, who's this, And we were just having a conversation. And they had dressed us in a particular type of outfit. She was dressed in the same thing I was, and without giving away details, they had a particular type of property, and I was playing with her suit, for lack of a better term, and she was playing with mine. We were flirting with each other, doing this and that. And we were there for about maybe 20 minutes, having full-blown conversations about things, talking about our schools, our parents, our music, like I said, typical thing a teenager would do. The door opened on the other end, and basically they motioned for her to, time to go, come on. Me trying to be Mr. Bravado, I jumped in front of her, put her behind me, and took a defensive stance, like you're going to have to get through me. And they very rarely contact or communicate, but I got the impression from them, if you don't let her go, the longer you're going to stay here. So at that point I realized I wanted to go. Chivalry be damned, I stepped aside and shoved her forward. You got to go. So she went out the door and the other door opened up. I walked back out the other door. Got brought back. Fast forward several years later, I'm sitting April Fool's Day, Bristol Community College, in a planetarium, which has roughly the same type of room situation set if you've been in a planetarium.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, same kind of room setup. I'm sitting on one side. There's a door on the other. Stanton Friedman's giving a lecture about UFOs, and the door opens up on the opposite side. She walks in the door. I get up, walk right by Stanton as he's still lecturing and talking, and it was one of these, like, the rest of the world wasn't happening, it was just her. So I walked over to her, and she saw me. She immediately dropped her purse and coat and whatever else she was carrying, and she comes walking up to me, and she puts her arms on me and is like, "You're real." And I'm like, "So are you." And we sat down and had a conversation, and about what everything. Wow. A couple of weeks later, we started dating. A couple of weeks after that, we moved in together and then got married, and later on got divorced for human reasons. But anyway,
holy mackerel! What a saga!
Right. But that was just the first person that I've actually met outside of that after meeting them. Then, after the divorce, I was working as a sound man. Yeah, big surprise. at a biker bar run by the Hells Angels, and I was the sound guy for the bands. And this band was playing, and all of a sudden, these two girls walk in, twins, and now I had met them on board, after I had already met my ex. And I remember that conversation. They saw me, and one of them, Audrey, came up, sat right on my lap. "Hey, good to see you again." Da 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 da. And it's like,
Audrey and Debbie.
Yeah.
Oh, we know them. Yeah.
And it's like, wow, it's deja vu all over again.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, but yeah, and then later on, I had a girlfriend that saw me being. So I've been seen taken, on board, and returned. My second ex, I have an issue with relationships, but that's a whole nother matter.
Hear that happen.
Yeah, that's a whole nother matter. After I had met Audrey and Debbie, and I had married this girl, although this girl was had to have an exorcism by Father Malachi.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, I really know how to pick.
We got about 10 shows here to do.
Hey, it's never boring.
Well, yeah. But anyway, she was witness to me being left outside, in February, with the sliding door and the front door deadbolt locked, and I'm out there naked on the front porch banging, let me back in.
In New England.
Yeah, in February.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Ooh, poor guy.
Yeah, it was not a fun experience. And waking up with clothes that are not mine, or clothes on backwards and missing things, and they do make mistakes.
Yeah,
they do make mistakes.
Now,
trust me.
So I've heard that people to whom this happens feel very, very alone until they find support. Now, how did you find support? And tell us about Starborn.
Okay, I first found support by working with Bud, because I wanted to know what was going on. My ex and I were trying to figure out what was going on. We started, I was already looking at various books and stuff, so I got a hold of Bud through one of his books, and we just started working together. And what was interesting is Bud was starting at that time, back in early 1990, when we were dealing with this 91, somewhere in the early 90s. He's like, I'm starting to run across a whole bunch of these types of cases. So he had my ex and I head up doing the interviews and helping all of these other people that had these type of interactions. And so he would get a case where these people know each other through experience. He would hand them over to us and we would help them adjust. And then later on I helped form Starborn Support with Audrey and Debbie, because they wanted. I introduced them with Bud. They finally got accustomed, and then it's like, we should start something for our own, and that's how Starborn Support got started. So we were able to help, and we still do help abductees around the world.
Now, how many people are in it?
Currently, it keeps growing, but it's literally hundreds and hundreds.
Wow. Now, one of the things that, one of the reasons I was recruited into the MUFON's Experience and Resource team was because of crossover phenomena.
Yeah.
Things that, for example, Kathy Martin would call me and say, gee, we got a case where somebody's been abducted, but there's poltergeist activity going on in their house. Or demonic activity, as they would call it. So we're running into some interesting stuff. And there seems to be a realization now that there are crossover phenomena, that UFOs can be related to, quote-unquote, ghostly phenomena, cryptids, things of this kind.
Yep.
What say you on that? Have you ever had crossover?
It's all related.
Yeah.
No, in my opinion, it's all related. I think it's dealing with a form of physics that we don't yet understand. Now, ETs or what have you, interdimensionals, extra-dimensionals, or what have you, may be able to utilize this. Now, as you know, I've been a ghost hunter as well for many decades, and I've dealt
Renaissance
with...
man.
Well, I'm the very model of a modern midget. I've noticed that there are certain key points that will cross over. One of the things that you and I can definitely agree on is the mental connection things, where in demonic cases you're hearing the voices. Same thing with ET. You're hearing the voice of this. And another thing that people don't understand, Bigfoot phenomenon, the thing that's known as mind speak, Bigfoot using mind speak with people. Then there's the other feelings that you get, of something going on. Your nervous system is designed specifically for electronic impulses. Now, are these impulses being acted upon by these outside forces, whether it be demonic or spiritual? Is it being acted upon by some sort of, ET thing playing with knobs and levers, or whatever they do to control? And is this being affected by Bigfoot that's using infrasound to affect your nervous system? Because in a lot of cases with Bigfoot, people feel paralyzed. Oh, here's that paralyzation thing again.
Full circle.
Yeah, you got where I'm going. So all of this does have an interrelation. I'm not saying that Bigfoot is an ET or is a demon or neither is an alien.
Well, these are all our terms that we
right,
put
exactly.
On. Yeah.
It's a label we put on something that we don't understand, because we don't like things that we can't understand, so we have to put it in a box.
We pretend to understand.
Yes. Well, we understand it because we put a label on it.
That's right.
Yeah, a very, very modern thing to do is just, let's just pop a label on it. Boom, done, explained. All right, next problem we have to solve.
Sorry.
And it's, it's really fascinating to sort of compare all these experiences, and I appreciate your experiences. I think this adds a different sort of dimension, pardon the pun, to sort of how we interact with these outside forces. And it's so interesting because I was recently at a lecture on the sort of like science and religion, and how they sort of intermingle, and it was really interesting to hear, because a lot of moderns we all do this. We're all essentially functionally atheists, right? So it's like some stuff is spiritual and some stuff is like, well, science can explain it, and maybe not so much the case for you, Matt, because you're already a scientist. You sort of get you have a different feel, different sort of worldview. But for those who are not in that field, there's sort of like, well, a miracle happens to, my dad, but if it's some other guy across, the seas, it's like, well, it's a natural phenomenon, who cares, right? And we can explain that with this, but the two are very different. There's no relation between the two experiences. And I'm going to wrap this up so I can get your sort of last few takes on this, because we're coming down to the wire here.
Yeah.
The modern worldview, I think, has been beaten up a lot by by a lot of different philosophical viewpoints, mostly nihilism, a sort of Hegelian worldview of let's take sort of the mystical and just shove it into our realm and then just completely flatten it. So it's just like it's just nothing. It's just a part of our very physical modern world, and there's nothing outside of it. And then when we're presented with these sort of extra events, right, something outside of this two-dimensional worldview, we either dismiss it or it's something that we can't quite explain with the terms that we have, so we do our best to take these terms and make up new terms, and then we just throw out everything. So we're at a point in our world where we've thrown out everything, and all we kind of have is, not much, right? Mm-hmm. So what do we have left?
Okay. You're talking about, let me do it this way. What do you see?
Okay, well, for those not watching on video,
okay. On a piece of paper, I've written
it looks like
a number. Mm. What do you see?
I know this meme. It's a 9.
Right. It's all about the perspective. Mm. This is your miracle, as he's seeing it as a 6. This is your scientific explanation, viewing it as a 9. Mm. The event is what's here on the paper.
Then here's the final question.
Okay.
If it's all based on perception, because I do agree, there's an objective reality, and we all have subjective experiences of that objective reality. With this perception, is there a way that we can all meet?
Compromise. Well, that's one thing about society lately that we've lost. We've all gotten ourselves into our little encampments in our trench, and we're lobbing things over at the other guy. Okay? I'm in this camp. We do it with our politics. We do it with our religion and in science. And here's something that most people may not understand. Science is a belief system. It is not necessarily rigid per se. The methodology you use can be more rigid, but we believe we understand right now what's going on. It's always supposed to be changing because we're always supposed to be learning more.
Right.
So belief puts people in camps. Compromise comes from when you're sharing the information about the beliefs. Okay?
Yeah.
Very sensible.
Is there a book anywhere in your future?
I am currently in the process of starting one, and it's going to be on haunted Masonic lodges in the southern New England
Well, that's
area.
a start.
Yeah.
Where can people find out more about you?
Spooky South Coast.
Okay.
Obviously. You can...
I was the second guest on that show. Tim Weisberg has always reminded me of that, yeah.
And you can find... I'm going to be Tom Reed's co-host, Inner Space TV. I also help out UFO Man on YouTube. I've been in a number of different books by Bud Hopkins and all the local authors about anything haunted. I'm more than likely in their books there.
Well, you're a local guy as opposed to most of our guests, yeah.
So, yeah.
Outstanding. Okay, Ben, I guess we're ready for our announcements. If
Indeed.
We could proceed.
And we were just talking about this before the show, but the Exeter UFO Festival returns in September at the historic Exeter, New Hampshire Town Hall over the Labor Day weekend. September 3rd and 4th, this is a great event. The whole town gets involved. It's sponsored by the Exeter Area Kiwanis Club to benefit local children's charities. Along with ourselves, speakers will include Kathleen Martin, Peter Robbins, Jennifer Stein, Bob Terrio, Mike Stevens, Lynn Nickerson, Valerie LaFaso, and Mac Maloney, among many others. The subject of our talk is time storms, with thanks to the great British researcher Jenny Randalls, who coined the term. We plan to do our traditional live broadcast from the event on Sunday with a panel of the speakers. This is a really fun event, so if you can join us, you can visit ExeterUFOFestival.org for more details.
And we should add that Matt will be there as well.
Yep.
Making sure people can hear everything, including our show, and helping us out.
Sort of the
really
de facto AV
that.
guy.
Yeah.
That's right.
Pretty much every one of these conference things I go to, I'm the one that winds up setting up the AV
God to
system.
determine. Anyway, visit our show website, BehindTheParanormal.com, where you can find over 1,100 hours of our regular shows and special broadcasts since 2008 from CBS Radio, Achieve Radio, and here on WOON AM and FM, including those that have been restored in the archives. You can hear many of those also on the major podcast apps, including iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. So download our show app. We actually have an app. It's free. It doesn't do much, but it's free, and you can get the information and the links to all the shows as they are posted, along with... well, that's about it. That's about all you can do with the app, but it's free.
Hey, what do you want? What do you want for free? You can also check out our show website. There's a bunch of charities that we have on our charity page. There's several good causes that we've adopted over the years, including Hope for Hilldale Cemetery in Haverhill, Massachusetts, USA Cares, Canadian Veterans Advocacy, Helping Haiti's Orphans, and the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America, Sisterhood of Ground Zero, and most recently, the Western Kentucky Tornado Relief Fund.
So what's Elf on the Shelf for next week, then?
Well, sitting there waiting for us on July 31st, we'll welcome James Keenan of the History Channel's The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch to talk about the mother of all flap area cases.
All right, we'll leave you today with a thought from 19th century French priest and poet Joseph Roux. Evil often triumphs, but never conquers. I'm Paul Eno.
And I'm Ben Eno. And thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey. And we shall see you next time on Behind the Paranormal.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.